Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we got a short episode today, but an episode nonetheless, with developers requesting more information about layering problems inside a Season of Discovery, major hot fixes a few days ago, and even bigger class changes as of just last night, community comments, and so much more. My name is Sky from the Comeback Kids. This is your Season of Discovery news. Grab a cup of coffee, sit down. We got a little bit to discuss today. Okay, starting off today's episode, it looks like Blizzard is actually seeking feedback from us on adjustments to layers inside of Stranglethorn Vale. Now, I'm not going to lie, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is one of those situations where the developers are kind of coming to the players with their tail between their legs because, man, oh man, the layering situation inside of there is absolutely, it's just horrible. Don't get me wrong, Stranglethorn Vale is one of the most fun PvP events I personally have ever participated in my 15 years of playing the game. It's kind of like all hell breaks loose between, you know, worrying about the boss one-shotting you, getting ganked by a full group of rogues, or just generally looking around in every direction and seeing, like, tons of enemies around you. It's truly an epic PvP event. That's just so much fun to play with when you have a group of friends with you. Now, Blizzard has been implementing some adjustments and fixes to the Blood Moon event to address issues with grouping being on different layers during the event, and in particular, they're actually seeking feedback on these changes and will likely be doing further adjustments in the nearby future to layering inside of Stranglethorn. They actually stated that today we've implemented adjustments and fixes that should more reliably keep groups together during the Blood Moon event, and we're hoping to get some feedback around your experience this coming weekend. They also stated that you should note that if your layer is full, new people joining your group may not be able to move to your layer after being invited. This is expected behavior, and that you may want to consider grouping up and moving into Stranglethorn Vale together ahead of the event starting. I cannot tell you how many times I've personally tried to do an event with my brother or some of my friends, and we literally can't get on the same layer no matter how hard we try. There have been times where we showed up, you know, 10, 15 minutes early, and it still bugs out and we can't get on the same layer. So most of the time, now we have to show up 20 to 30 minutes early for the event and just sit there and pretty much just do nothing, which feels really, really crappy. I'm not gonna lie. Overall, though, the event is getting better as the weeks go on, and I do love all the rewards and the grinding there is this phase for it. I just want to be able to play with my friends, and I'm sure all of you do too. Hopefully, they just start cleaning up the layering, because I'm not gonna lie, it's at an all-time bad for me personally, and it really needs to get fixed. Now, speaking of changes, it seems like we also got a ton of changes over the last couple of days, starting off with the first set of changes being hotfixes toward Mage, Rogue, Shaman, and Warlock. On top of that, they actually implemented hotfixes toward these classes and even increased the experience gain from elite quests and dungeon quests as well, which should help players level up generally faster in their, you know, journey to level 40. I'm really hoping, though, personally, for the future, that they continue to make more incentives toward questing out in the open world, as you know, dungeon spamming has really become the meta and the only way most players want to level, because they just want to level up the fastest. So I'm hoping they don't nerf the dungeon farming. They just simply buff up the leveling opportunities for questing. I think we can all agree here to buff something that's not doing well rather than nerfing something that people generally enjoy and is performing really, really well for the community. Additionally, they do state that the Dismantle enchant will now proc more often for casters and melee DPS, and a couple other Blood Moon event changes being that when you are in the spirit world, you can now resurrect at a chain spirit for 30 minutes after the Blood Moon event ends, and you can now find a Zandalarian emissary atop the Durator Zeppelin Tower right before you enter the zone, which is a really nice quality of life change also. Now, we have to talk about some of the class changes coming to Mage and Rogue, starting off that with Mage, that their spell power will now benefit the critical strike damage of your spell Frost Bolt for Mage, hopefully making this rune a little bit more viable. You know, now talking about Rogues, it's being that your preparation will now properly reset the cooldown of your quick draw between the eyes and redirect spells as well. Additionally, for Rogues, your Shuriken Toss got a quick bug fix when it was interacting with another Rogue that was talented in the Seal Fate as well. Nothing too serious for both of these. We do have some additional Shaman changes, being that your offhand Storm Strike attacks can now correctly trigger weapon procs, including Wind Fury weapon and Flurry, and your Healing Rain animation is now being cleaned up as well, so it's not so buggy above player heads also. Lastly, with Warlock, your Haunt spell will now properly increase the damage done by your Siphon Life. I mean, listen, there isn't too much to go over in this particular section. That's why I didn't want to make a dedicated video toward this. But with the news we just received as of last night, we do have a lot to go over. Let's jump right into it. Of course, we did receive some of the tuning on the 27th of last night for Druid, Hunter, Paladin, Rogue, and Shaman. Now, kicking things off with some major changes toward Druid, being that your Life Bloom mana cost is reduced by a whopping 50%. So this could potentially make their single target healing a lot better and consistent when it comes to healing those main tanks inside of a raiding environment, because I'm not gonna lie, as of right now, they're just spamming Wild Growth and performing just fine, so hopefully that mixes things up. On top of that, Living Seed will now heal for 50% of the critical heal that planted the seed, up from 30%, and it will now bloom from non-periodic healing received as well, in addition to any damage taken. And lastly, for Restoration Druids, Nourish's mana cost has been reduced by 27% as well. Generally, all very, very good changes for what is right now, to be honest, the highest healing per second class inside of the game for a raid environment. So look out for Resto Druids over the next few days. Additionally, Balanced Druid has been really seeing a lot of tough times over the last couple weeks, and now it looks like they're getting some buffs. With Moonkin form now reducing the mana cost of your Moonfire by 50% and increasing Moonfire's periodic damage by 50%, and surprisingly, this will also apply to their Sunfire rune, also giving Moonkin a massive damage buff overall inside of raids, and even inside of PvP for dealing consistent damage all on the move while they're trying to kite people, which is really good. Not only that, Moonkins can now cast non-healing restoration spells without canceling their shapeshift form, including Remove Curse, Remove Poison, Abolish Poison, Innervate, Rebirth, all that jazz, you know, that comes with utility for the Druid spell, which is going to be great for helping them out in a raid environment or helping yourself personally and saving yourself a global cooldown, not having to swap back into Moonkin form, save some mana, all really good stuff. My favorite change for balance easily has to be Fury of the Storm Rage rune actually getting buffed, with now when this rune makes your healing touch instant when you cast your Wrath spell, it will now make it castable in all shapeshift forms, giving you incredible off-healing potential inside of your raid, making you highly sought after inside of every raid group out there. Because, listen, I know Druid has been hit a couple times really hard over the last week or so, but these changes to increase their utility and rotation based off abilities like Moonfire, Sunfire, Abolish Poison, and Decurse, and all these things is really good for the class overall, rather than just, you know, pressing one button and getting a lot of damage out there. Overall, very good changes to Boomkin. Hopefully you all like some of these changes being implemented. Let me know if you're a Balanced Druid main in the comment section below what you guys think of these changes. Additionally, moving on to Hunter now, actually, they received some nerfs toward their dual wield specialization, with it no longer granting a 30% damage bonus to Raptor Strike for wielding two weapons of the same type. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this could very easily lean Hunter into wielding a two-handed weapon once again, and of course, the Hunter community is in a bit of an uproar right now and already trying to figure out the best way to deal damage possible, as Beast Mastery and Marksmanship have been really lagging behind significantly this phase, so we will have to see how this affects their damage meters over the next week or so inside of Gnomergan. Moving on now to Paladins. Their Crusader Strike will now deal holy damage instead of physical damage, allowing it to ignore player armor, and is now affected by holy damage prevention as well. Crusader Strike will still, however, be considered a melee attack and not a spell. Additionally, Seal of the Martyr can no longer trigger your Art of War and will no longer be triggered by Frost Oil or other weapon procs, which doesn't feel good either. I'm hoping that this Crusader Strike buff could slightly increase their damage, but I'm going to be honest, man, I think Paladin is going to need a lot more work to be able to bring out, you know, competitive DPS compared to the other classes out there. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, just remember, any class can go inside a Gnomergan and clear it and perform just fine. I'm simply just talking about the highest echelon of players, you know, trying to push that ceiling to the max. I just think Ret needs a little bit more work for something like that. Moving on now for Rogues, it seems that Redirect is seeing a massive buff to where it is no longer affected by the global cooldown, and its own cooldown has been reduced to a very minor 10 seconds. Additionally, Main Gauche now generates 3 combo points on your target, and the base energy cost is reduced to 15. And just a Flesh Wound, its threat bonus increase will generate approximately 30% more threat, which is fantastic. All of this for rogue tanks overall. All these changes are really solid for this class, and the Redirect rune is fantastic in terms of leveling and just general PvE encounters now, because previously, you know, Redirect being on a 60-second cooldown was just really bad and clunky, so this is a major W for rogues out there. And lastly, for the class changes, once again, it seems that Shaman is seeing loads of buffs, with Two-Handed Mastery rune now also providing 10% increased attack power and 10% increased chance to hit with spells after hitting a target with a two-handed weapon. And this is a very big buff to the two-handed build overall inside of a PvE environment. That 10% hit on spells and attacks is very good for this class not missing or you know, getting resist on all their spells, which could potentially make it viable. There's going to have to be a lot of testing that goes into this, but overall, a very, very welcome change for the class. Additionally, Shamanistic Rage will now grant the Shaman 5% of their maximum mana per second rather than scaling off of attack power, spell power, or healing power, which is going to sort of balance it out instead of, you know, just rocking double Rockbiter weapons all the time to get, you know, the maximum amount of mana possible, or swapping your weapons in and out to sort of cheese the mechanic. Additionally, they even buffed one of the strongest runes inside of Phase 2, being that Spirit of the Alpha will now grant the casting Shaman a 20% increase to attack power if they cast the spell on a target other than themselves. And this right here makes Enhancement Shaman significantly stronger by not only bringing one of the strongest utility abilities in the game to raid, but it will also increase their attack power significantly, which is going to be very, very interesting to see how Enhancement Shaman performs after all these buffs finally come in. Moving on to the other end now, the worst healing spec in the game, being Restoration Shaman, is actually getting some buffs as well, being that Earth Shield's mana cost is now reduced by 67%, and the charges are now increased from 3 up to 9. Not only that, the base amount healed is now properly going to scale with the level and is about 50% higher than previously at level 40, which overall should really help this spec out in terms of healing. I mean, hopefully Earth Shield's an actual viable option inside of a PvE environment, hopefully inside of raids, so you know, that would be really, really interesting to see. Not only that, they actually reduced the cooldown of Ancestral Guidance from 2 minutes down to 1 minute as well. And I'm not going to lie, Shaman has been getting significant love the last few weeks. You know, going from bottom of the barrel in pretty much every spec inside of Phase 1 to now inside of Phase 2, seeing loads of changes. You know, it truly brings a smile to a Shaman main like myself. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, they're actually making additional changes to Gnomergan, being that the increased armor value of certain mechanical bosses in there has been slightly nerfed. They actually state that the higher armor values on certain enemies was correct and it was intended, but they are adjusting the armor value on the Crowd Pummeler, as well as Mech Engineer Thermoplug to slightly provide up to a 10% increase in physical damage received, which should definitely help melee DPS out. So, ladies and gentlemen, it seems like the Gnomergan tuning has officially begun. Due to the fact that melee is on the bottom half of the raid logs, and I'm not gonna lie, inside of the raid, in a lot of fights, there are a lot of anti-melee mechanics out there, which how much moving and positioning you actually have to do. So hopefully with some of these changes, they can keep it at that. And, you know, we'll check it out over the raid logs over the next week or so. Hopefully this makes things better and balances out the ranged versus melee meta right now inside of Gnomergan. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, it seems that we're at our community section part of the video, where we take your opinions and comments from below in our comment section, shout them out, and discuss them. So if you have something to comment about Season of Discovery so far in Phase 2, let the developers know and the players know about it in the comment section below. Moving on to our first comment, we have Eric Craig stating that I think they just need to add new stuff to dungeons later on. Like, let's say a month into Gnomergan, you hear whispers coming from Scarlet Monastery, and suddenly there's a new rare spawn that can occur that actually is a tough fight, but drops raid level loot. Just an example to keep things fresh. Dungeons are great, and it sucks that we're done with them so quickly. And yeah, man, I gotta agree. I gotta be honest here. I love all the dungeons inside of Phase 2. You know, you have Scarlet Monastery, Razorfang Downs, even Uldaman. This definitely is me advocating in support of them trying to bring, you know, heroic dungeons inside of Season of Discovery, to bring more of like an endgame loot for players, because at this point, it feels like once you hit level 40 and then you acquire all your pre-raid best in slot, you're pretty much just raid logging and then running Stranglethorn whenever you have the time. I just feel like there's a lot more potential out there for content in sort of like an endgame loop. I mean, there's a lot of great things about Season of Discovery, but there's definitely a lot of things that can be improved, which we will be talking about in a main video and over the next couple days, so definitely stay tuned for that one. Next up, we have Bash65 stating, every week people get closer and closer to just asking for retail lol. People asking for mythic dungeons. Now listen, I do gotta be honest, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of quality of life feature integrations that have been inside of, you know, other iterations of World of Warcraft that I would really love to see inside of Season of Discovery. I would love for there to be a barbershop. I would love for there to be a guild bank system. Hell, I would even love for there to be like heroic dungeons and dual spec. I mean, I know it sounds really, really crazy asking for all these things, but I just think we all need to remember Season of Discovery is a lot more like future iterations of WoW, like Wrath of the Lich King or Cataclysm, rather than Classic itself. But hopefully they keep that middle ground going in the future. And for the last comment of the day, we have Ron Hightower stating, Season of Debt. And boy, oh boy, is this a touchy topic inside of Phase 2 with how many gold dumps they actually have inside of this phase. I mean, you got all your mounts, your crafting recipes, your consumables, repair bills, spells. I mean, there's a lot of things you need to spend money on. I came into this phase with about 200-ish gold, and right now I'm at about 25 total. So let me know what you all think if there's like too many gold dumps inside of this phase in the comment section below. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, leave a comment below for me to respond to it live here on these news videos to have a little bit of discussion point and talk about it, man. I would love to see your opinions on some of the topics in these videos. So if you want your voice to be heard, let me know about it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and subscribe to get absolutely flooded with Season of Discovery content. I want to thank you all so much for watching this video. It is an absolute pleasure to be making content for you all. Until the very end, my name is Sky from the Comeback Kids. I will see you all in the next one. Peace.